when we got to the airport to go home, and we're just, at this point, it's like a little bit of a relief. Like, we're at the airport. The trip is for the most part done. We just got to get these kids their parents now. And so to be able to sit there and look at our whole group just meshing so well together, getting along so well together, and them talking about each of the high points that they had throughout the week, like, oh, I liked this at this farm, or this was really cool at that farm. To me, as a youth development professional, that is the part where I'm like, oh, wow, this was such a good trip.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Louisiana Farm Bureau podcast. I'm your host, Karl Wiggers, and today I've got two folks with me, Hannah Devall from Louisiana 4-H and Josh Meeks. We just got back a week ago now from Ireland, and if anyone's been following along on our social media pages, you've seen that. But Hannah, you were our group leader, so thank you for coming on the podcast, and we're going to break it down a little bit today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure to have y'all with us in Ireland, and also a pleasure to be here today.
Well, Hannah, low-key, has been for months saying, when's my podcast episode? When's my podcast? And I said, well, after Ireland, it's happening. So
super excited to be here.
Hannah also is a member of St. Martin Parish Farm Bureau and handles our social media, and she's a young farmer and rancher, so she's a Farm Bureau folk as well. So for anybody watching that, Josh Meeks is the executive producer of TWILA. He's been on the podcast before, but he's back here because he and I went and represented TWILA on the trip to Ireland. Hannah, first, before we get too deep into this, what was in Ireland? Why did we go to Ireland?
We took over 100 4-H'ers, staff members, faculty, and some parents, chaperones as well, to an international agricultural tour in Ireland. So we did a 10-day trip. We had 3 bus loads of our Louisiana 4-H folks that headed out there, and we spent 10 days there exploring farms, looking at the different agricultural systems there, as well as getting to know some of the culture there and being able just to sightsee along the way.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's a long trip, and you've done these types of trips before. It's can be exhausting. It's a lot of together time. But I think it was a good trip overall, right? Would you agree with that?
Definitely agree. I was looking forward to this trip for sure, but it definitely exceeded my expectations as well. Just our group was great. We had a great group of 4-H'ers with us, and we had some great leadership from EF, and we were just so excited to have y'all with us as well.
Well, let's back up in time a little bit. Josh, you were a couple weeks into the job, I feel like. And
yeah, I didn't know who anybody was. And Karl comes to me and says, do you want to go to Ireland? Hannah said she's planning this trip. I was like, I don't know who Hannah is, but yes, I want to go to Ireland.
Yeah, who doesn't, right? So back in February of 2024, January, really, technically, y'all launched this, right? More than a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. In February, I was at the state livestock show in Gonzales, and I'm with an intern. We're doing an interview, and I look up, and Hannah and Dr. Lepley walk up and they're like, hey, would you want to go to Ireland with us? And I said, yeah, obviously. And came back, and I was trying to connect, get our entire team to go to Ireland, because why not, right? And so that's where it started, and it's been 18 months in the making, probably longer for folks at 4-H who've been really doing all the legwork. But why, Hannah, as someone involved in Farm Bureau and 4-H, why was this such an obvious thing to ask? Y'all didn't just want a camera guy because I had a camera and I was in front of y'all at the moment.
It was a plus.
It was a plus, I'm sure. But why was that something that was, I guess, something y'all were interested in, and maybe where was that connection?
Right.
Farm Bureau and 4-H.
So when we think a lot about what our goal and basis of Louisiana 4-H is, and 4-H all over the place, is really just life skill development and positive youth development. And we think about where we want to see these students whenever they grow up and become contributing members of their society. It's really on working on those skills that are so vital, but sometimes so hard to develop on their own. So we really our goal at Louisiana 4-H is to guide students through that life skill development, responsibility, teamwork, adaptability, becoming aware of their surroundings, some empathy, those types of things, and just making them aware of what goes on around them. And so many of our students are involved in agricultural type projects. And so when we think about whether that be a livestock project or horticulture, anything in between. And so they're just working on those skills and developing that. So working with Farm Bureau is a great fit because we have so much overlap. We work on the youth side of it, but y'all work so much with volunteers of the adult nature. And so whenever we think about kind of like where those different groups kind of see themselves and one melds into the other, ideally, fingers crossed, if we all play our cards right and do a good job, we'll see some of those 4-H members really grow into Farm Bureau members in the future. So I think it was just a really solid fit. And having a personal camera guy, really is just icing on the cake.
Well, it worked out really nice for Josh and I because whenever we were shooting leads and we were standing in front of the Cliffs of Moher, Josh can just take a few photos of me, and I have a great Facebook profile picture now, and I did the same for him, so it worked out pretty nice. But we did take a lot of photos of the kids as well, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But Josh, this is not your first trip to Ireland, but it probably is your first trip with a few dozen 4-H students and parents.
Indeed. So I went to Ireland back in 2014 as just a vacation. We went to a concert in London and managed to do a 2-stop kind of deal. Stopped in Dublin, mostly just explored the city. Didn't really get to see any of the countryside. We did go to the Cliffs of Moher, but it was all of that in between. And to me, that's where you really meet the people, right? Is you have to get outside the city. You have to meet the country folk. That's where the real culture is in Ireland. And I didn't get to see any of that the first time. Mm-hmm. And so this time, that really developed and getting to explore that part of the country. I mean, it was so much more than just seeing Dublin, which is, it's beautiful, but a city's a city, right? They're all pretty much the same.
Yeah, lots of pubs, lots of shopping. It's a city. And so I want to talk about some of that in between, where we went from Dublin. We did go to the Cliffs of Moher and Galway area, but in between those two was a lot of farming. And so I want to go through this, kind of the itinerary to an extent. First few days were in Dublin. What did you think about Dublin with the kids? And what did those couple of days look like?
To start off with, when I think about Dublin, my first thought is that we were just a bit tired. So after flying all night and getting these kids and just the anticipation of getting there, and then we had our first few days in Dublin. And so we were able to sightsee, and we did some guided walking tours. The students had time to just kind of get the feel for Ireland and kind of see like what Ireland was, make some of those big comparisons between like the outstanding differences, right? Between being at home back in Louisiana and Irish just culture. And so we kind of started off with that. And then once we got our feet under us in Dublin, we started heading, I think, south first, and then we went out west. South, we went to the Irish National Stud Farm, mm-hmm. which was a horse farm, which was awesome to see.
Yeah, it was immaculate. Is immaculate, that the word that we
I was going to say impeccable. It
was insane.
Yeah, that works best.
It was insane. It was so beautiful. I did a story on that this past week in the show. And Josh did his story was kind of around the getting to Dublin mm-hmm. and kind of getting our feet under us in the culture and what we were looking forward to, the differences and things like that. But I was looking through that video again of the horse farm, and Josh shot probably better stuff outside around the horses because he was with the group better than I was. I was carrying a bigger camera. That's my excuse.
Sure. We can go with that.
Sure. But the video of these horses, they're just beautiful.
Yeah.
I was showing Brady, and he was just like, oh, man. It was incredible. And then they gave us some drone video.
Yeah, because we didn't want to fly the drone out there. We're always cautious of, flying near animals. And these are very expensive horses that we do not want to disturb. So we talked about it, and he was like, you can probably put the drone up at a distance. And I was like, I'm not risking it at all.
But seeing it from above, and we have other drone video that we did shoot, Josh did shoot. And it's insane when you see everything from above. But that horse farm at National Stud was just insane, seeing it from above.
You mentioned how immaculate the horses are. I think all of the animals just look so much prettier in Ireland than they do in other parts of the world. I don't know if it's because they're set against this lush green backdrop.
Has a lot to do with it.
Or it has to do with their diet, or we were told that the limestone in the under the soil plays a huge part in the way that these animals are develop and grow.
Nutrition.
But yeah, like every animal was just like beautiful out.
I remember we had that discussion. So after the National Stud, the next day we went to a dairy. Mm-hmm. And not to fast forward through this entire itinerary, but it was a 10-day trip, folks.
Week in a little day.
Yeah.
Week in a little day is what I said on TV in one of those one of our stand-ups. There are plenty of bloopers. But at the dairy farm, I remember we talked about it. Like, these do not look like what we were expecting dairy cows to look like. Like, they look good.
That's what was so interesting about the climate there. So a lot of times whenever we're thinking about, we're going on a trip, we're going to go international. Let me check the Weather Channel. Oh, it's going to be 60 degrees and sunny, maybe a light rain. Well, that sounds great. But when you think about the differences in their climate for 12 months, and that's about as warm as it's going to get, right? About 70 degrees there. It's like they're high in the summer, their normal average high in the summer. And so when we think about that, and it doesn't get very, very cold there because, of like their just general environment. And so we're thinking about how their forages just grow, and it's so lush. I couldn't get over how every time you looked out the window and every time you looked into a pasture, it looked like a Irish screensaver on your computer, like a stock photo. Mm-hmm. That's what every single thing looked like. And so when you put animals in that situation, that was the biggest difference to me versus at home, is whenever we see pastures here, and our pastures look very different when you think about through the seasons here, and just in our area. And so whenever you think about that, their pastures stay green and they stay lush, and they have a small rainy season in the wintertime, and they bring everything in, but it stays green and it stays lush. That's just such an amazing comparison to make, and what's so cool for the kids to be able to see that and realize that through their agricultural system there in Ireland.
You mentioned the Irish screenshot, looking out the window and seeing all these beautiful pastures. That was a running joke with me and Karl, because we're following the bus in a car that we had rented because we didn't want to hold you guys up if we ever had to stay behind at a farm. And so we're driving along these very tiny Irish roads in our very tiny Kia car. But we're noticing, like, through driveways, like, oh my God, look how beautiful that is. Oh my God, look how beautiful that is. But what you don't realize, seeing it back here, is that almost every road in Ireland is lined with about 4 feet tall of either a hedge, a stone wall, or grass. And so we're catching little glimpses of it through driveways, and we're like, well, we have to shoot our leads for TWILA. And it's like, well, that's a good spot. And so we would literally catch it out of the corner of our eye and like whip a U-turn and try to park in little alcoves just to be able to capture these spots. But it was so funny, always joking about, I know right behind this hedge, there's beautiful scenery that we just can't get to.
Yeah. We also would drive down the highway, and when we actually got on the open road, like on the, I guess the interstate would be something like that. And we're just driving, you come across a hill and it just opens up, and you're just like, my goodness. And so Josh will be looking out the driver's side, which is on the wrong side, and I'm looking out the passenger windows. I'm just like, look at this, Josh. And we just started saying, oh, gross. Ugh. Or, ugh.
It is.
Who would want to look at this all the time? I did ask at that last place we ate dinner, kind of our farewell dinner. I said, do y'all ever get tired of this?
It being so pretty.
She's like, absolutely not. We do take it for granted, but we don't get tired of it.
Like the lushness of the grass was like, it looked fake. Like if you would buy, think about something, it was just so rich.
Yeah. So what did you think at the dairy farm, Josh? That's the first place we flew the drone. Well, first farm we flew the drone at. So what did you think when you put that thing in the air?
I mean, it does, like Hannah said, it doesn't look real, especially once you get up and can kind of see over the hills, and you see these like, they just overlap. They're layered for miles and miles, or kilometers and kilometers, however you want to put it. And I mean, I got lost up there. I think I was flying that drone for a good hour, missing half the tour. I mean, thankfully you were out there with them, but I couldn't get enough flying up there, and I would send it probably over somebody else's farm, neighboring farm.
Whoops.
Bring it back. Yeah. Whoops.
I thought we weren't supposed to say that.
That part was technically okay, as long as we were not within close distance to cities or airports.
Oh,
They're
okay.
very restrictive about where drones could fly there.
We followed all the rules.
I had to do a lot of research, honestly, on drones before we left.
But yeah, when Josh flew all the drone work while I was with the group, or in most of these cases, and we'd get back at the end of the night and look at video, and he would show me. And even this past week, there were some shots he used in the show, and I was like, where was that? When did we shoot that? My goodness, it was just insane. It looks like a screensaver.
It's in between those little hedges. You must look the other way.
Right beyond the hedges. I mean,
I will say it was just as beautiful from the ground in a lot of these places. The wheat fields at the other cow farm that we had gone to.
Redmond.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man, I want to talk about that too, because that was a really cool.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where 4-H started to shine. Like that was like the most 4-H stop there might have been.
That's where they put them to work.
They got put to work.
They put us to work, so we got to do some service, but also it was a very diversified operation.
Super.
So there was a little something for everyone there. So there was some horticulture there. They talked a little bit about like wildlife management, what that looks like, and then of course there were beef cattle. So that pertains to everyone because we all eat, you know?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
everyone got engaged there. But then we also got to see some row crops. That was the first time we got to see potatoes in the field.
Mm-hmm. I never actually got over that part of the tour.
I didn't know potatoes flowered, to be honest with you. I've never grown a potato.
Josh ate one.
I wasn't the only one. We were eating them raw out of the ground. I mean, it's a potato.
It was either that or become a problem for TSA. You know?
Yeah, I was really nervous that a lot of these kids were going to try and bring some of this stuff home. I saw them.
I did see a lot of potatoes go in pockets, and I was like,
they got soft
FYI,
before we got in the. They weren't dry enough, so they got soft. So I told the kids, I was like, oh, we should throw that away.
Yeah, we should throw that away so we don't get.
By the time we got to Galway, I was like, we should throw those away.
Yikes! They brought them. They kept them for a little while.
Yes,
oh my goodness.
Yes.
I was getting legit nervous for customs. Like the morning we're trying to leave. Like, please, dear Lord. I'm separate. I'm in my own little...
I think we had our biggest problem coming back was just, I forgot I had a Coke in my bag.
Oh, that
happens more than a couple times.
I would imagine a lot of people wanted to bring home oyster shells too.
I don't know if that was even spoke about as an option.
Okay.
But I think there was a lot of either eating them and putting them back or just avoiding them.
Or just not eating them at all.
They were probably scared that y'all would try to encourage them to eat them on camera.
I'm getting like my mouth puckering with the saltiness that was. Anyways, back to Redmond's. That was a really cool stop because the kids, so there was the cattle, there was the row crop that the kids got to see, but then they also had vegetable production and they put the kids to work, which was a really cool. Kids and parents got put to work, hands, knees in the dirt, putting plants in the ground. I thought that was a really cool aspect because you mentioned it, service learning. You were talking to me about what we call that in 4-H, and I was like, what I call it is learning by doing, and that it's very much in line with 4-H. Tell me what you were saying about service learning and how that plays into all that 4-H is about.
Yeah, so when we think about learning in 4-H, there's a lot of times where we're like, oh, we're here to teach. And there's different teaching styles and different learning styles. And so we utilize a lot, most often in 4-H experiential learning and service learning. So experiential learning is, like you said, to learn by doing. So you do something, you process it with the group, and then you apply it on forward. And so that's just very, very small potatoes, if you will, of what experiential learning is. And then when we think about service learning, so when we come into an area, we identify a need, whether that be a community or a school, identify the need, do a needs assessment, and then do a service, and then go back and reflect on what we did there and apply it into the community and what we can do moving forward. And so when we think about those two different learning and teaching styles, we can see that was super evident, especially at Redmond's farm. So these students were able to go to the farm, and it wasn't, this is where we harvest cauliflower, or this is where we're going to plant cauliflower. It was, okay, so we need to get these nets from the top barn down to that bottom field down there. And so the students were able to use their skills and be able to say, okay, well, what's the best way to get these down there, and be able to work together and get that done. And then they were able, and then the next thing was, okay, we're going to plant some cauliflower here. And it wasn't, hey, watch me plant the cauliflower. It was, hey, you're going to plant it like this, and then let's work together and do it. So those kids are able to do that service. The need was identified for them. The farm needed to get it done. We were able to do the service together. We learned about the process throughout. So they learned about how far the plants need to be, why, not just do it like this. They were, the tour giver there with Farm Tours Ireland was just great about explaining to the students how deep it needed to be and why it needs to be this way. And then they were able to do it. And then they got to go later that evening, and we were able to eat some of our, not the bounties of our harvest particular, but from that farm, at a farm to table dinner that night. So we were able to eat beef from that restaurant, and I believe we had beef stew that night. Maybe we had beef stew quite a few times, but I think that night was the best beef stew we've had, or had that whole trip. But they were able to eat in the hotel restaurant that we ate at that night actually is owned by the same people as the farm. And so they source, I believe it was 6 restaurants they source with food from that farm.
Yeah, they have 2 hotels and I think a couple of restaurants within each that all are coming from just their farms.
Right.
They have like multiple locations of their farms, but it was a really cool experience.
You mentioned the bounty. I believe that Andrea, the proprietor there, said that they were going to send pictures once the cauliflower had started to grow.
Oh, that'll be awesome.
Way they could actually see what they had grown.
Yeah. So they didn't plow that up whenever they were done, whenever the kids left, which is really cool.
Yeah, it'll stay there. And the restaurant that we ate at had something special for you too.
Little VIP back
maybe
behind the scenes. I'll back this up because it was kind of our idea, but we got there. We went there early. We skipped a stop because we filmed some at Redmond's farm. We missed the strawberry stop, which I heard was really awesome.
Absolutely.
But we filmed and we were like late for lunch, and we were asking, what's
Jerry with Farm Tours Ireland.
Farm Tours Ireland. We're like, Jerry, where should we get lunch real quick to catch up with the group? And he's like, are you going to dinner tonight? Which I think there was some misunderstanding here because we were trying to stay with the group and catch up, get a quick bite. He sent us to the hotel, and he said, ask for, I don't remember her name.
Whatever manager.
Ask for the manager, which or ask for Amy. We find out Amy happens to be the manager of the hotel. She gives us like, just take your pick. Go in here, eat at the Carvery, which looks like a Piccadilly line. It is not a Piccadilly line. It is insane.
No, it's everything because it looks like a Thanksgiving dinner.
It was one of the best meals I had on the trip, and it came from behind the glass at a hotline, and it was lasagna, which was insane. Anyways, gave us like, just open it up to us. So whatever y'all need, y'all set your computers up, work some, whatever you need to do. Well, then when we get ready to go up to the restaurant upstairs where the dinner was for the kids, on our way in, she's like, would y'all like to see the dry, what she called the salt room?
Salt room.
And we were like,
Salt Cave.
Is it a spa?
I was like, sure.
And meet the head chef?
Yeah. The head chef or executive chef or whatever he is that's over the entire operation was back there, and he gave us like the tour. And I was like, this is fascinating. I don't know anything about what you're saying, but this is awesome. Later on at dinner, where Hannah and I are visiting, and Josh, I think, walking around, came up on that, and like, we should see if we can get Hannah back there to see that salt room. And we just kind of went and asked the wait staff. We're like, can we go back to the back and see the chef?
Can we see Andrew?
Can we go to the back and see the chef, please?
Well, we asked Hannah too. Like, do you want to go see the room? And Hannah's like, do I?
Yeah.
So he was like happy to, but he told us, he was like, nobody ever really cares to see this kind of stuff.
Right.
So he was excited that you actually were interested in it. So all that is the backstory of how Hannah got this little VIP viewing of the salt room. But what did you think about that? Was that a highlight? Was that up?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the fact that the chef just stood there and he was like, I don't normally talk about these things out loud, but like, I wanted to know like step by step. And so it was cool to find out that not only Redmond's farms is where the cattle come from, they're harvested there in the same county, and then they're all of the meat is sold through their 6 different types of restaurants. And so they have like different types of restaurants to meet the needs of what the harvest is that they have, either from the beef cattle or from the veggies and other things that they're growing. So it was a really, really cool way to see how sustainable that operation is. But it wasn't a one restaurant or like a one stop shop. It was on a huge scale. The farm was huge. The restaurants were, just like big hotel restaurants. And so when we got to go back there, Chef Andrew was so kind to explain the whole process, which I believe he had explained to y'all already.
He did.
And y'all had to listen to twice, but I'm appreciative.
It was worth it.
But I thought I have a desire to learn more about meat science and have a background in that a little bit. And so that's always something that I'm super interested in. But he told us all about sourcing it and what that looks like. And however many head they send every other week to harvest, he gets to go and pick out. I'm kind of thinking that maybe the restaurant that we were at was maybe their top end restaurant, just seeing the rib racks that he had dry aging in this salt room. But he gets to go and pick out the rib racks. Then he was, talking about how he's that's one of his jobs. And then he has to go in 40 days later after they dry age. And then he even showed us where they wet age some of the other meat as well. So that was super cool to see.
It was a really cool, I was kind of listening in on the conversation. He was just like, I'm just a country boy that happened to learn how to cook, and this became my career. So you know,
he grew up on a dairy, he said.
It was really cool, like hearing kind of hit some of his background, personal kind of connection to the farm and what
he was a competitive shooter as well. And so he and his sons, I was like, okay, shooting sports, here we are. That's big in 4-H too. We got that.
Yeah, it was cool. And he's a fan of our cuisine in Louisiana too.
I believe so.
He was talking about New Orleans, like, I'm familiar. I'm familiar with y'all's food scene.
So that was certainly a highlight for me, just being able to see that. So I appreciate y'all for getting me in the back door to the kitchen and the salt room.
Aside from that, what stands out? I mean, is there any other super high point that stood out to you? I have one for me.
I feel like I've been asked this a few times since we've been back, and I can't say that there is a particular moment that I'm like, oh, this is awesome. But when we got to the airport to go home, and we're just, at this point, it's like a little bit of a relief. Like, you know, we're at the airport. The trip is for the most part done. We just got to get these kids their parents now. And so to be able to sit there and look at our whole group just meshing so well together, getting along so well together, and them talking about each of the high points that they had throughout the week, like, oh, I liked this at this farm, or this was really cool at that farm. To me, as a youth development professional, that is the part where I'm like, oh, wow, this was such a good trip. Like, it was good as an adult, but like to be able to see them just like really relish in that moment of being like, oh, I loved this. Or do you remember when we saw this at that farm? And knowing that they're taking those experiences with them to whatever their path may lead, that it's not one moment, but to me, like, that is the reason why we do what we do so often, just to see them have that experience with them and know that their perspective has forever been changed on what international agriculture looks like, on what agriculture in general looks like, and just like their own personal perspective. That really is just like that little tidbit would be my high point for the week.
At that culmination at the airport where they're all kind of talking about the trip in past tense, was that where it all clicked? Because I had wondered if you had kind of witnessed, so putting my thoughts together, we had interviewed every kid individually at the end of the trip, and the big theme was, I came here knowing nobody, and now I'm going to leave with a lot of friends, basically. Did you being on the bus, since we didn't get that opportunity, did you see a lot of that kind of developing in real time, where kids probably started out quiet and just sitting next to a total stranger, and then I'm sure by the end of the trip, we're just chatting and karaokeing and everything else that happened on the bus?
Yeah, so I've been on quite a few 4-H trips before. No stranger to traveling with 4-Hers, but I was honestly so surprised, even like our own kids surprised me by the fact that by the time we landed in Dublin, which, I mean, like spending 24 hours flying with a group of people that maybe you didn't know super well, like that's a pretty good icebreaker in itself. But, you know, I was prepared to lead organized icebreakers at the airport, but the students were so eager to get to know each other that it was a moment where I was like, oh, I had this on my to-do list when we got to the airport, but I can step back and these kids are doing this organically themselves. And so that was super interesting to me. And our group really was just such a good group of, they all meshed together, they got along. And so to be able to experience that together, like not only are they like exploring new relationships amongst themselves, like friendships that they can continue to see each other at 4-H events and things like that, but then also to be learning all this new information at the same time, like what a substantial amount of growth these kids overwent in those 10 days.
Right. Well, that was for me, my highlight. And granted, we weren't on the bus the whole time, but I remember we met a lot of these kids sleep deprived whenever they showed up in the Temple Bar region doing their walking tours. And they they were fine. They were perfectly polite, but they were like closed off. They're like, I don't want to do it. I don't get that camera out of my face. Kind of.
I felt the same way.
I mean, yes. But seeing from that very first day, second day, even as we're kind of walking, doing the riding guided tours in St. Patrick's Cathedral, how kids went from, you could just see them as like individuals and little cliques of 2 maybe. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden there are groups of 4, 5, 6, and they're all like super clicked up and grouped up.
Yeah.
And it's becoming a little family, and not to be too cliche about it, but they were. By the time we got to that final dinner, to that final day, really like leaving Dublin, they were all like, and you just watch that whole thing transform almost from farm to farm, from stop to stop. It's like, wait, I didn't know you smiled.
Yeah.
I didn't know you speak. You speak to you have friends on this
Yeah.
show, and not to be like I'm making light of it, but really like you saw like them open up. Lance Bruce is an ag leadership alumni. I've known him for 6, 7, 8 years now. I've interviewed his daughter Kelsey, who was on the trip, and he messaged me before as soon as we're in the airport or something, realizing that we're on the same trip and we're in the same group. And he said, make sure you get Kelsey to come out of her shell a little bit. So I started instantly joking with Kelsey, who was
harassing Kelsey.
I was not harassing her, but I was giving her a hard time. And she was not having it. She was like closed off. She's like, get that camera out of my face. I have so many pictures of her like this for anyone listening, hand straight over the face. You're not taking my picture. So by the end of the trip at the oyster farm, which we haven't talked about, she's like putting a mic on and she's going to like narrate what's going on at their little adventure, their games. They're doing their team stuff. And I'm like, what arc.
And she's one of our students who came really without knowing anyone.
Knowing zero people.
She signed up for the trip and didn't have a buddy or anyone else from her parish had signed up. And by the time that we got off the airplane and got on the bus for the very first time, I would have never known it. Never would I have thought that she came on this trip not knowing anyone. And so I applaud our students, and I just appreciate the opportunity for them to be able to develop those friendships and relationships amongst each other. But it really was just outstanding. A great example of just the group absorbing her as one of their own, and the group just really coming together and her being open to it.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I think is so interesting, is that so many of these students, although they may have a passion for agriculture or they're interested in learning more about agriculture, these students came together for this trip and they weren't a cohesive group. They're 4-Hers from across the state. And being in 4-H is something that united them, but it wasn't something that they had really worked together as a team or a group on. And so just to be able to have these experiences with this group and be open as young people, to be open to develop those skills and to see that really come to fruition was super cool.
That I keep glancing down and seeing your notes here about life skills. And like, if ever an important life skill to have is to be able to build relationship and maybe even become best friends with somebody really quick to really make this trip, enjoyable and grow that way. I think that's a huge important skill, is building relationships, even if maybe finding that common ground. And I'm sure they all did that. They all had some of that by just 4-H, like you said.
Right.
That's pretty impressive. We kind of skipped over. I didn't mean to skip to the end here, but when we got to Redmond and we talked about the dinner at the hotel, that's a highlight. It's a highlight. What else? What other farm tours do we hit after that? That was the last night in that Kilkenny region, right? And then we went from there.
We also did the apple orchard.
Forgot about that.
And so that was cool. The students were actually able to like taste multiple different products that they made there. Apple cider vinegar and apple syrup.
I was astonished at the number of children who had never touched anything with vinegar in it. They were like, what does vinegar taste like? And then oh, that's terrible.
They gave us little cups of apple cider vinegar when we got there. And then they let us taste on the backside too. Did y'all make it back there?
Into the, under the tree, right?
Under the tree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we got to taste.
I brought some home.
Okay.
I had some pancakes.
I think that's where a lot of people had taken their allowance of bringing back bottles of things. They filled it up there. There were people buying salad dressing and every other thing that
apple syrup for sure.
I got some.
We did as well.
I think that Saturday morning after I got back, Britt made like pancakes. And I was like, I'm putting this on there. She wasn't a big fan, to be honest. Oh. But I was like, I got it. Yeah. It's all good. All more for me.
Yeah, I did the same with my kids as well.
So we did the apple orchard. What else do we do?
We missed the strawberry farm.
We missed the strawberry. Over on the West Coast, where all did we go there? We went and did
more. Well, that was a lot of that was tours too.
Yeah, but the Cliffs of Moher. Let's talk about that for a second. Was that incredible?
Yes. Can
you put words to it?
No. I really can't, honestly. It
is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. I mean, I
haven't looked at a list, but I was trying to explain to somebody. And it's like, I imagine if there's a list of top like 10 natural wonders of the world, that's got to be on there. Maybe 15. I don't know. It's insane. It felt like standing at the Grand Canyon.
Well, and what's crazy to me is that a lot of that is private property. A farmer owns that, and there's sheep and cows that graze right up to the edge of these cliffs, and they're just looking at you while you're admiring, the beauty of the world. And there's a cow just chewing cud behind you. It's kind of otherworldly.
It was just insane to stand there. We got weather came in and kind of shut the sightseeing down for a minute. Everybody went into the gift shop,
right?
And it was madness.
The cafe.
And
all at the same exact time.
That was fun. But then y'all had to leave, and we stayed behind, and it got really pretty.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. It got.
I don't think we knew that.
It was beautiful before.
It was very nice before.
Right when we got there, it was beautiful. I personally took probably 20 soon-to-be senior pictures with cliff backdrops.
I mean, it's hard not to. There's not really a bad backdrop there either. That's what was crazy.
I took the hike and went down the cliffs at first, and then on my way back ran into you, Karl, and you were like, "Let's take a picture." And I was like, "I'm never gonna be here again." I'm also felt like a little model for a minute. The wind was blowing off the cliffs and all the things.
But why not?
Right.
I was like, I'm not going to come back here anytime soon.
I was a little disappointed because I went in 2014. That part where you kind of go up away from the tower, that wall didn't used to be there, and you could walk up to the ledge. And I didn't do it. I had to crawl.
From a 4-H youth development standpoint, that scares me.
I completely understand that, because looking back on the pictures from 2014 that I took, it's terrifying. I can't believe I did that. And looking at it now, it's obviously they had a safety issue. I just couldn't believe that at one point it was open.
Yeah, it was wild. It was nuts. I did not know what I was getting into. Also, getting there, you're taking the tiniest roads.
Right.
And getting back to our hotel from there.
Terrifying. Was
so beautiful. We took those switchback roads, and
that area was called something in particular, and I'm drawing a blank at this moment, but do you remember?
I don't remember.
It was insane. It was beautiful.
It was so beautiful. It was like limestone.
Oh, is that what it was? I remember looking out at the mountains. I was driving, but I was trying not to.
White knuckling almost the entire time.
It was terrifying, but I remember being just we actually did stop a couple of times. We're we've got to stop and take some pictures of this. Because, again, that weather had come through, and it just came out sunny. Because a lot of it's overcast. Mm-hmm. It was overcast when we got there-ish. And when we left, it was just sunny as can be. And I was just God, it's so beautiful.
So beautiful.
So beautiful. But so that was that day. The real ag trips in Galway, though, was it really just the oyster farm and the sheepdog?
The sheepdog.
Sheepdog. How did we forget that?
Yeah.
That was wild.
That was, I'm an avid sheep enthusiast. So probably second only to my meat science passion would be sheep would come up right next.
Okay.
And so I was very much looking forward to that stop. I'm not particularly a dog enthusiast though. And so I wanted to know more about the sheep. I was like, tell me more about the sheep is what I kept asking the farmer, all these different questions. And he was like, but look, my dogs.
But you were on the sheepdog experience, not the sheep experience.
Completely understood.
It was awesome.
But I had been holding all my sheep questions in for when we got to him.
It was funny. I remember you asked him a question what breed is this one? And he's like, I have to get back to you on that.
Right.
And he did. He did.
Yeah, he did.
But no, the sheep, you were watching that one from the drone. I was also, Josh,
I was, and that's because it takes place over such a big area, and the guys who worked there said that please send us that because we never get to see. Pip was the dog's name. We never get to see what he does when he goes up the hill. We just send him and he comes back with the sheep. We don't actually get to see any of that action. So being able to follow that and follow him down the hill and get all these different angles, that's going to help them. I was pretty proud of that. But you mentioned, seeing sheep. We saw them everywhere on that switchback trip. They were in the road, they were on the side of the road, and they all have to be spray painted on their wool so that way they can be identified amongst different farms.
The different colors. I thought that was cool. The different colors. If they had green on the neck and red on their back,
right,
that meant one farmer. And then maybe it's blue and yellow on a different one,
which is clearly an issue because while we're making these drives, there's here's a red sheep with a blue sheep. Are y'all supposed to be commingling? But I guess at the end of the day, as long as they go back where they're supposed to be.
It was pretty impressive. My only disappointment with the sheepdog demonstration was that it wasn't a big herd of sheep, because I would have loved to have seen a dog or two dogs work 100 sheep. It was probably a dozen.
Yeah.
10, 12. But it was still very impressive. They sent it out. Pip went probably 100, 150 yards away up a hill.
Up a hill, yeah.
And then brought them in. And then he would bring them, 30, 40 yards and lay Pip down, and they would just stop where they were. And it was really cool. And the kids were really into it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think, I don't know this. I didn't ask. Did we ask him? We may have asked him about this, but the idea of like the ag aware type tours, like, I feel like most of his tours are just like, oh, how cute, some cute sheep. And then he was getting asked questions from probably just mostly you, but not only you, about like,
taking one for the team.
About the herd health or,
Yeah.
Actual Aggie questions.
Yeah, it's not just run-of-the-mill tourism questions.
And I think he was probably like, ooh, whoa, okay, I get to actually like talk farm.
Talk the real stuff.
Which was pretty cool to see I was on the other side of the fence. Looking back at the kids and seeing them engaged, locked in, it was pretty cool to see that.
We had quite a few kids who maybe show sheep or show goats and those kinds of things in 4-H and are engaged in those animal science type projects. So I know just in visiting with them, we had the sheep farm was one of the last farms we went to. So really I felt like, I'm going to say we bottled up those questions. Maybe it was mostly me, but we bottled up those questions until we got there.
Sophie K, we talked to Sophie K, who has goats.
Sheep and goats.
And sheep. And she was like ready. She was in the front. She was in the front of the rail.
She was excited. I was right there by her too. So. We were ready to fire those questions.
So that was that was part of the last leg of the trip, really. And then the very last day, of ag tours was the oyster farm.
Oyster farm.
And I
didn't know what to expect.
I didn't either. I had no clue. I've honestly never even been on an oyster farm in Louisiana.
Same.
So I was kind of like, okay. And I don't personally like oysters.
I couldn't tell.
Clearly. You need to put that video right here over this segment and show how Karl reacted to
my mouth is
freshly cooked oyster.
They are salty.
Very
salty.
They were like still swimming.
Yeah.
The ones that we had.
My mouth is hurting now. Anyways, it was a cool experience. And what was really impressive about that tour is they really have built that. I don't want to say they built the farm around tourism, but they have definitely built tourism into their farm.
And they spoke to that.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, because they had that hands-on experience that was built right out there. They had tables and chairs and all that ready to go.
Yeah.
Well, the sheepdog farmer as well spoke to how they needed to pivot and diversify some of their operation, and agritourism worked right into that.
Yeah.
And I think that whenever we went to those two farms, that was something that I noticed whenever we went to the farms earlier in the week that weren't really focused on agritourism, but more production agriculture. We can see how those farmers really interacted with us a little bit differently, and the hands-on components were built into them. But I could tell when we went to the sheepdog farmer as well as the oyster farm, they're bringing in money through agritourism because of these tour experiences. And so I thought that was cool to compare, but also I'm really glad we got to do both.
Yeah, I don't want to say it like in any kind of a derogatory way. They were tourist stops. And they just happened to be tourist stops based around agriculture because the others were for sure farms that we got welcomed onto. But those last couple, the oyster. So for folks listening, they had their, I guess, production room. They're sorting. They had like a little warehouse. I say a little warehouse. It's very tiny, relatively speaking. And they had 50 of us piled in the room on like little folding like benches. And then they took the kids out and we walked and we saw the different, parts of the farm and different equipment and traps and stuff like that. But then they brought them back up to the shed and they had tents set up outside where they had the kids go through some games. And I thought that was like the hands-on. They made it very competitive and the kids took it quite seriously. It got loud and crazy for about 5 seconds at a time. It felt like it was just, and there was a lot of build up and then craziness.
It wasn't just handing it off to the kids. Like they were like the proprietors there were just as involved in that competition.
Yeah.
We're going to check the box, make sure you did the seaweed right, make sure you had 12 oysters, make sure they weren't, broken open beforehand.
Make sure you flipped the traps and they were all strapped down correctly. And
Right.
It was, so they had the two different races or relay type races where they had the first one, they had to flip traps, they had to shake traps and flip them and then strap them back down.
Which is a big task.
Which is part of what they do on the farm daily, yeah.
And it's a huge labor input on their side of things that they talked a lot about. And once you do it a few times and you're able to appreciate what rows and rows and rows of those oyster bags look like after they have to be each shooken individually.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was that's a good point, because that was, hey, I want you to appreciate what goes into the farming that happens here. And
You're doing this 3 times. We do it hundreds of times.
right. Yeah. And then the other game they had to do was they had to pack some finished, ready to ship oysters into a little styrofoam box, and they had to lay a bed of seaweed down. They had to put exactly 12 oysters in there and put the lid on, or put more seaweed, the lid, and then tape it up and get it ready to go. And they do
That
2
was
boxes.
Pure chaos.
And
kids were being taped to the boxes.
Literally
trying to
one
go so
arm
fast.
got taped on there. It was fun, but that was
I'm glad those didn't go out.
and they unboxed those quickly.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. I think that was a really cool stop, and that was and they even got to taste some fresh oysters, and
We did.
some folks like Jeremy loved it.
Yeah.
Some folks like me, not so much.
Yeah.
But I did it. I didn't spit mine out though, which is what half the students did, or a few students did.
Maybe a couple did.
So, some of them were angry after because they were forced to try it, and then they were very upset.
And who forced them?
Somebody who wanted it on camera, I guess. Just
Nah, don't look at me. I was forced also.
yeah, he was forced, and
Josh finds it hilarious. I actually had a student trick me into it. It's like, I won't do it unless Mr. Karl does it. And I was like, well,
Oh.
I'll do it. I'm not going to back down from a challenge.
she was the one who was upset.
And
she ran
I
away.
did it. And she was asking too many questions about it, like holding it up. I was like, you can't think
Oh, that's
about
what
it too much.
she did pick it up.
She picked
I
it up, she's
remember
like, "Do I
seeing
eat that part too?" And I'm like, don't, just 1, 2, 3, go.
It was
You
weird
gotta go quick.
because they were like, you have to chew it, and I was like, oh, I'm not used to chewing it. I just swallowed.
They were
it.
salty.
They were
salty.
so fresh, though. I mean, they literally just came straight out the water.
Yep.
And so, like, a lot of times when you get them in a restaurant here, they've been packed a couple days or shucked.
And they're chilled
before.
too, and so I
They're
think that
chilled.
temperature plays when it's room temperature. It's weird.
The extra seawater
Yeah.
in the shell was probably something for me that was a little bit.
You had to dump that out 3 times, right?
Right. You had to tip it over.
To get it all out.
And so
Carl did it 4 and still didn't like it.
that was the difference for me. I felt like that it still had some of that salty water in it, and so it really did. You didn't even need to season them; they were nice and salty.
Plenty of salty
I was looking for some Tabasco and a cracker.
everywhere.
For every meal. we were told at one coffee shop that we had a Louisiana Farm Bureau shirt on, and the barista was like, "Oh, y'all from Louisiana?" I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Next time you come, bring Tabasco. We'll trade it for whiskey."
Oh, okay.
So,
Not a 4-H trip.
pro tip,
Not a 4-H.
if you're ever going to Ireland, take some seasoning with you,
Yep.
because they'll appreciate it.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts on this trip? I mean, we saw castles, we saw cliffs, we
Castles,
saw
cliffs.
cows. Any other sea sounds? But we saw a lot. We experienced a lot of life skills, a lot of growth. Any parting thoughts that now that you've been home for a week plus, that, I mean, you've talked about it in staff all day today, I'm sure. You're probably tired of talking about Ireland.
My number one thing that I'd like to say is just that I'm so appreciative of having y'all with us. And having the TWILA team come out and be able to document it. And it was such an experience for our kids. So they were not only experiencing agriculture in a foreign country, but they also got, some on-the-cuff media training as well. And it's just just really, really pouring into our kids. And I really appreciate y'all being able to do that and taking the time to do that, and your administrators for letting it happen. So
That's the real thank you there. I was about to say, I mean, you didn't have to twist our arms, but Farm Bureau put money behind us going, and that's what's really I'm appreciative of. Josh, you said this a couple of times. Josh, for anyone that doesn't know, comes from traditional news media where getting interviews is not always easy.
Usually twisting a lot of arms and shoving a camera in the face of somebody who doesn't want camera in their
And getting good interviews is even more difficult sometimes. Yeah. And after a couple of interviews, just the first couple, Josh was just like, man, I forget that these kids actually are solid. They're sharp kids.
Yeah, before this trip started, I was expecting every interview to be like, "Tell me what you thought about this." It was fun. Because I mean, that's what a lot of teenagers will give you, But these 4-H kids just right out of the gate just open up and giving you full thought out interviews. And these weren't kids that like rushed up to us to be like, "Hey, I want to be on camera." These were kids that we randomly picked in like the first 5 interviews, I think.
Whoever looked at us when we had a camera and poor Addie was like sleep deprived and was like right before our first dinner that first night. And she was just I was like,
she was
man,
the first one we picked out. We were like, you've been straggling in the back of the group.
Come here, tell us what you thought about the trip here. And it was like, what a great start to this. And honestly, it never was like, it was all just A+. And I shouldn't be surprised. I've been around this Farm Bureau world for about a decade now, and I've been around the youth and FFA and 4-H. I shouldn't be surprised, but every time I'm just like, man, it is awesome. So thank you for training up these kids pretty well.
Well, it takes a village, and so we appreciate all that Farm Bureau does as well to help us work with these students and train them up as well.
Well, if anyone, after hearing us talk for however long this has been, I'm very sorry if you've been waiting around for some awesome nugget. Here's the nugget. We have videos, we have blog posts, we have photos from all of this. Hannah wrote an awesome blog post that kind of talked about the 4-H's, and that's in there. We'll have them in the show notes. You can find the links to that. You can find all of our videos that we've already done. Josh will have eventually some bloopers, and I'll come back and attach them to this. He was working on them earlier, and I was hearing all of my bloopers, and I said, can we not do that? But there will be bloopers one day, and I'll put them in the show notes as well. We'll find all of our coverage, all of our blogs, all of our photos in the show notes. And until next time, I'm Karl Wiggers, Josh Meeks, Hannah Devall. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time on the Louisiana Farm Bureau podcast.